Hello, my name is John Wright. I want to describe to you the sight reading process that I teach my students, a process that's helped them in all district auditions, honors band auditions. It's helped them greatly. You've got to have a process or else you're going to sit in that room and go numb and you won't be able to even think. You've got to have a process. So I'm going to step you through this process so that you can do well when you sight read. I'm going to zoom in the camera a little bit so you can see the specifics of what I'm talking about on this page. Okay, the first step that you want to think about after your clef, either your treble clef or your bass clef, you're going to see this area right here that I've circled called your key signature. And so your key signature, you've got a flat on your B line. All of your B's are therefore going to be flat. Think about, you're going to imagine yourself pushing down that first valve trumpet players, that A key and the register key clarinets, whatever it is for your instrument, you're going to imagine, that's the B flat. I got a flat on my E space. All of my E's are flat, whether it's in the top space or down on the bottom line. It applies to all my E's. And then I've got a flat on my A space. All of my A's are A flat. And you imagine yourself pressing those keys, moving the slide to that position, whatever it means for your instrument. That's your key signature. And then you want to think, what is the scale that goes with that? You need to memorize how many flats or sharps are in each scale so that you can then imagine yourself playing through that scale and that arpeggio, and you'll say, okay, I'm locking into this gear. I know I've got these notes to choose from within that particular scale. And then you can get that in that gear, and then you don't have to read every last little note. Say there's a little run going up. You say, okay, I'm starting in this little valley here, I'm going to that mountain peak, I'm going to go back down. And you don't absolutely have to read every last little note head. You can just say, I'm going from here to there, and I'm within this groove, this gear called a key signature, this scale. So your key signature, then the time signature, you want to note the top number tells you how many beats in the measure. That's simple. The bottom number, you will say, well, I'm going to take that bottom number and I'm going to divide it into our whole standard note. Our standard note is a whole note. It's a complete note. I'm going to divide a complete note, a whole note, by 4. And when I divide it by 4, I get 4 quarters. The quarter note gets the beat. If this bottom note was, number was an 8, you would divide our whole complete note by 8 parts and you get eighths. The 8th note gets the beat. And so and that's the way you'll figure out what type of note gets the beat from that bottom number in our key signature. I mean time signature. So your key signature, time signature, then tempo marking. Usually in all district, all county auditions, honors band auditions, they'll usually, when they hire the guy, they ask him to write it in a moderato tempo. So what you want to do is memorize. It's going to be like this, just bum, bum, dun, 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 dun. They're not trying to trick you. They're on your side. They want you to do well. So they're not going to give you some outlandish tempo. Every time I've ever judged, which has been for like 25 years, they always use a moderato tempo. So you can pretty much count on that tempo. You don't have to worry about any fast allegro or anything like that, just a regular steady tempo. So you want to start establishing a tempo as you're mentally preparing. Then so you got your key signature, time signature, tempo markings. Then you want to look at your articulation. Notice these notes are slurred. You want to tongue this note, slur to that one, just pop down the key or lift up a key. Then these are staccato. So da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, da. Notice the accent right there. You want to watch for articulation. Then you want to look, the fifth thing you want to look for is the dynamics. Where it crescendos, a lot of times they'll have the crescendos marked for you. If they don't, if the line rises like that, add a crescendo in there. If it descends, add a decrescendo in there. Now some people would frown on that, saying that's very narrow-minded. That's not the way it needs to be every time. Well, it's a good place to start to become musical, because you want to show the judges that you're a musician, one who can interpret a phrase and play it musically. So you want to go da dee da da, or let's get rid of the staccato. It's hard to be very musical with all this staccato mess going on. But da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. You want to say something, and you can even slow it down just a little bit. You want to show them that you've got feeling as you play this. You will get nervous and you have to prepare for it. You have to say, yes, I'm going to get nervous, and when it happens, you don't want to freak out. You'll say, okay, I'm nervous, but I'm going to use that nervous energy to concentrate because I don't want to be robbed of doing a good job. I'm going to continue to think. I'm going to think of my process. Key signature, time signature, tempo marking, articulation, the crescendos, the decrescendos. Do I want to add in a little slight retardando with a little vibrato trailing off on that little half note right there? That'd make it, just so nice. And then you want to mentally rehearse the whole thing by picking up your instrument and what's called tizzling through it. You'll actually, if I was playing this phrase, I would mentally rehearse everything. I'm not going to blow into the instrument, but I am going to tizzle. I'm going to do everything I've got to do with my tongue, where I've got a tongue while pressing the valves down, tizzling the whole way through it. They give you usually 30 to 45 seconds usually to sight read, and usually the sight reading is only like 2 lines long, maybe 8 measures. And they'll also, when they hire these third-party people to write the solos or for the sight reading for the all district auditions, honors, and all that stuff, what they'll do is they'll give them a little checklist. Well, it's got to be a moderato tempo. They'll say, let's put it in this time signature and within these key signatures. And then they'll say it needs to have an accidental. So somewhere along like measure 3 or such as there'll be like an accidental, and you've got to remember that. Say we put a natural sign in front of this A right here. Okay. And so it's like a banana peel. This is the original playing rules in this video game here that we're playing, and each one of these measures is a room. And then, but once you hit the bar line, it's kind of like a force field. Sorry, a force field that takes you back to the original playing rules of this video game. So you play it through this room. Everything's cool. You're still going by these original rules here. You hit the force field. You're still good. Oh, here's a banana peel. You don't want to step on that and slip. So you got to say, it's good for all of my A's throughout this whole measure until I hit the next little force field as I leave this room, because when I hit that force field, it's going to zap me back to the original playing rules that I had in my key signature back at the beginning. So that's how these accidentals work. It could be a natural, it could be a sharp, it could be an extra flat that's not in the key signature. These accidentals, and they apply only for that one measure, and then this bar line will zap you back to these original playing rules. Usually they'll have that, and then they'll have something to where you have to recognize that how this process of accidentals working with and against the key signature, how that works, and how the bar line will get rid of that so that you go back to that. Usually they'll have like an accidental in this measure, then on the second measure, you've got to remember, oh, I'm going back to my original playing rules. So you have to be aware of that, and you got to mentally rehearse that as you're tizzling through the exercise. And you play through it completely, practice being musical as you do it. Then I suppose the last thing to do, step number 10, is to practice. You have to practice sight reading. Just like I tell my students this all the time, the best way to learn to play an instrument is by playing the instrument. And the best way to learn to sight read is by sight reading. Neurologists have found that there's more going on in the mind when someone picks up a sheet of music, picks up an instrument, and reads that music, interprets it musically. There's more going on left hemisphere, right hemisphere than any other activity known to man. So you're using a huge capacity of your brain. I think it's somewhere around 90%, whereas everything else falls way below that. So your mind is like cranking on both cylinders, and you're going to have to practice doing that because there's nothing else that can compare to it. It's a heavy mental process, and it involves everything that you've got. So you've got to practice that, and if you'll do that, you'll be better prepared, and you'll be a little bit less nervous. You're going to get nervous because there's a lot of pressure, a lot riding on it, but that's okay. Use that to focus you in on what you've got to do. And again, practice that. There's lots of online resources, different software packages that will allow you to practice. You can take method books, sight read out of that. The ones who've done that and who've practiced sight reading have done very, very well. And I hope this video was helpful for you.